Jamie here, JB here. Hope everyone's doing outstanding. Friday, August 15th, 9:06 a.m. The Ides of August. Not really the Ides of August, but anyway, talk really quick about the market. Some names I'm looking at go from there. S&P futures in the green slightly. Retail sales data this morning, a tad worse than expectations, a 10%, so nothing crazy there. Some upward revisions to last month. I guess good stuff there. So another data piece that kind of puts a nix on what people could construe as a slowing economy. Yeah, maybe we are, right? Yesterday's PPI data, I mean, surprising, the biggest jump in 3 years, but it's not a true like a true picture of what how inflation's going. But yeah, I'll talk about that in a second. Um, so the SPY is over 646 here this morning. Not much else in the way of catalyst. Consumer confidence is out. I think it's out at 10 o'clock today, and then you have that POTUS Putin meeting, but I don't think there's gonna be details. It's Alaska, so the time zone's different. So I don't know if it's gonna be like later this evening. There'll be some kind of press conference. I don't even know if that'll be market moving. The big piece I think will be next week. So next Friday at 10 a.m. you have Chairman Powell will be speaking at Jackson Hole. So uh, uh, it's probably there's been back in the day was Ben Bernanke had the I don't know if it was Operation Twist or was the official kickoff of QE. Nobody knew what the heck QE was. Quantitative easing was never a word ever, wasn't mainstream whatsoever. But that's kind of like the turning point, I guess. I don't know if that was back in 2013. I forget when that was, but we'll have to see what Fed Chair Powell comes out next week. You have to think he's going to talk a lot of things, and I think he already has an agenda. Like he's going to talk a little bit about the new Fed framework. Uh, but you have to think he's got to talk a little bit about policy, secession, right? Who's possibly in the next in place? That so it's certainly be interesting. It's during market hours, so should be fun. But outside of that, take a look at the market this week. Yesterday was another one of those catalysts, right there, where you think, okay, if there's the Bears have an opportunity to really take control and start to push the market on their narrative that tariffs is going to destroy the economy, then that was it. That was another chance, and it's like gap to the downside. That was low point of the day was the open, right? And then markets bounced by 11 o'clock back to flat on the S&P, then some weakness again, bears tried again, and boom, found some buyers, and the S&P closed another all-time high yesterday, despite the surprise PPI data. So I was kind of somewhat surprised. I'm like, even if the bears can't get didn't take control, you would think that at some point people just going to take some profits, right? I mean, but it doesn't look like now, right? So maybe at the end of the summer, September, October, sometimes a little tricky time frame. People coming back from vacation, the holiday, or what have you. Uh, anyway, so that's kind of the overall market. I had 628, 646 on the SPY. We're right here at 646 again. I have to think we're probably some chop here today and close above that into the weekend. So that's the overall market. What do I have here? So now just quick on some individual names here. And, today's one of those days you wake up, or not today, yesterday afternoon is one of I'm, you know, you're kicking yourself, but, the market sometimes is going to punch you in the face, but you got to get back up. You got to learn from it and things like that. But United Healthcare, monster trade this week, right? Last Friday afternoon, I finally pulled the trigger on getting some bounce calls on UNH. I kept talking about it. And then finally, like, dip my toes in. I think this might be it. Who knows? Tough to catch a falling knife. Typically, you lose a lot of fingers doing that. But sure enough, it was the bottom, right? It was 252 Monday, bounced around at 260s, then 270s Wednesday. And then, Thursday, we have the PPI data. So even at the open, you're like, okay, if there is some profit taking, they're going to pull, UNH is going to get pulled down just because, right? It's a Dow component, what have you. So, my calls are up over 1,000%. What, any sane person with the calls expiring the next day would say, let me take the profits and either roll them out or revisit. So that was the plan yesterday. But I was holding around 270. I'm like, I might get another chance. Maybe I'll revisit today. And then sure enough, that stay comes out from Buffett. I think last Friday or Monday I was talking about that there'd be some catalyst and activist or something because the valuation of United Healthcare, it's pretty easy to see it's undervalued, right? It's just there's so much negativity and there's this huge cloud over the name that it just becomes one of those less about the underlying fundamentals and more just about sentiment, right? And I use the analogy comparing it to Boeing. And I think very similar, right? Boeing had that negative stigma associated with it. You had all the investigations and the dark cloud uh, with those two crashes. But anyway, so of course, the last of my calls, and the good thing, not the good thing, but I only had a couple calls left, so it wasn't like I had a full position on those calls. 48 cents, they're going to be 32, 33 bucks at the open. So I mean, you do the math, but on the flip side, made some great profits as well. So one half you could say, well, could have never been in a position, right? So that's the rationale. But the other thing is too, and I put on the watch list too. Not only is it made some money, so great profit wise, but also great lesson wise. I should have had when I have higher conviction on a name, I should make sure I still have some type of exposure, whether that's the weekly or if I'd rolled them out. And I was looking the 320s, 325s for next week because 289 was that 50-day moving average. I was kind of like the line in the sand, so I figured I had some time. But great trade, live and learn, and continue to look for opportunities. Right? I always say, never wrong, just early. Today, today is right but late. Right? I don't know how to put it, but I'll figure out another saying. All right, so that's United Healthcare. Which brings me to Lulu, right? Lulu, frustrating open yesterday. Maybe that played a little bit in locking positions because, uh, the market's lower. Lulu overnight was 205, right? So it opens at 196 and change on the heels of the PPI data. And then it just sold off and all the way down to 192. And I'm trying to see what catalyst. And there was some downgrade on with Deutsche Bank or whatever, just to adjust the price target. I didn't think it was anything to really impact the stock, considering where the stock has been. You have to think analysts are lowering the price target, right? So, uh, and and then you look around and Nike's down, Under Armour's down, all the Deck down, all the same kind of sector, apparel sector was down, and I guess it was on holdings, right? So they reported great earnings, but stock was still down 8%. So I don't know if that's some of it, but it's like you have to think that people are still looking now that United Healthcare kind of played out on this bounce. I think I look for the next bounce play, and you look at Lulu. It's another one of those companies that are fundamentally sound. Their last earnings were solid and it still sold off. So whether it's some of its inventory concerns, tariff concerns, recession concerns, I think it's the whole basket of things. It's one of those names. It's like I don't think it's going to get back to 420 from January, but there's 225, 230. I think it's like a reasonable target, and that's short term, whether a couple days or a couple weeks. So until that plays out, I'll probably continue to look for opportunities to play some strikes here. It closed at 195. It's gapping over 200 bucks here. I still have some of my 205s. I got those 215s for next week. I'll continue to look for opportunities to play this one for upside because I'm not saying that all as well. You look at gaps and 255 or so was back in June. So again, call me crazy. Maybe I'll look back at this video in a couple weeks from now and say, okay, got this one too. But hopefully it plays out. All right, so that's Lulu. Lemonade, similar to UNH, right? Actually, Lemonade typically doesn't rally when the market is weak, right? Especially small caps. Small caps were down yesterday over 1%, closed down 1%. Some of it I think is on, there was a slight downtick in the probability that the Fed's going to cut rates in September. I think it's down to 88%. It was like 95% coming into yesterday. But you take a look at Lemonade, and typically when small caps are down, the market's selling off. Lemonade sells off and continues to sell off. Yesterday, it gapped lower and boom, starts to squeeze. By 10 o'clock, it was over 60 bucks, right near its all 52-week high. So again, similar with United Healthcare, my calls are expiring tomorrow. They're up 500% plus. I'm like, let me take some more off. I held some runners, and just have a couple coming into today. I could see it trading to 70 plus, or at least continuation of squeeze. So with that premise, I might look for some high 60 strikes into next week or the following week, maybe 70 calls, just to hold as kind of like a flyer, just because if it does find some squeeze, one of those names, I think it can get some FOMO. And if it gets to 70, 80, 90, 100, I don't know if that'll happen, right? But if it does, I want to make sure I'm in a position. So that's Lemonade. And then Pool. Pool's a name I've been talking on and off about for years. I don't know if it was one of my top 5 stock. No, it wasn't. Uh, but it's just great name, especially, I talked about back in the COVID days because people making vacations out of their back homes, backyards in their homes as opposed to being able to travel, right? So Pool saw a big uptick in business, and then a lot of their model is recurring revenue, right? Once they have your business, it's a recurring revenue stream. So their growth, not only once they capture the customer, the consumer, then it just recurs going onward. So it's a great story. and Berkshire Hathaway added a stake. I don't know, it's a couple quarters ago, added some more, and then yesterday announced it added 168% to their stake, another 1 million shares. So big position, and the stock's kind of been like almost range bound. They just had earnings back at the end of July, and their earnings weren't that great. Nice bounce at the start of the week, but it's a name I think could trade up near $400 in the coming weeks and months. So the issue with Pool, only monthly strikes, and the increments are $10, so it makes it tough to find a decent risk reward. But September 370s look interesting. So depending on what it does here at the open, might add those. Just some other names. MDB has been a nice Friday lotto trade the last couple weeks. So don't be surprised if I add some strikes here. Flat day yesterday. I think that one trades up into its earnings, which should be into September. Same with Align, but Align, I will look for some strikes into next week. Reddit, I put it on the watch list this morning. It's like the one that got away. I wouldn't even call it the one that got away because I've made some nice profits on the Reddit calls. But I had those 240s, and then finally, after you had to have wait and held through the ups and downs because the premiums aren't going up as quick as the stock is, right? So I mean, the stock's been on a massive run since its rally, since its earnings, but the premiums haven't rallied in lockstep because they've been expensive already. Uh, and then finally, yesterday was the day that they really took off. The calls were up like 400%. It's just tough to trade because then it hits the highs and then it just chops around for the rest of the day, and the premiums just erode. So I'm the more I start thinking, the more I think Reddit's going to trade north of 300 in the coming weeks. So I might, in lieu of trying to chase weeklies, get some higher strikes and just hold. And last but not least, IIPR CGC took breathers yesterday. On a flip note, there, Open Door, I came out with news their CEO is leaving. I mean, if you're trying to create a story for this name to really start to take off again, I mean, you can't script the name better. CEO leaving, it don't matter about the data now and the fundamentals. It's like, what are they going to do now? So it just creates this aura of speculation. So, I mean, that thing's up 15% in the pre-market. Nice call out there yesterday. Said, what's funny is it was like melting higher like all week, And I remember back with GameStop, UPB was pointing about it for months, but before the whole big run into the start of that year. But I remember, I had the GME calls going into December, right? A month before the huge rally. I had the 1250s, the 15s. But I remember it ran up. I there was like a PlayStation release or whatever, and I got the calls based on some of that, and that's September. And the stock, I forget what the price, maybe it was $8, and it ran to 10, and then it sold off. And then even into January, once my calls were gone, it would run up to like $20. And then it took a long time for the story to really like take off. And then once it did, it was just off to the race. I'm not saying the same thing is going to happen here with Open, but it like had its initial phase of its run and craze, and now it had some consolidation. And like, in the back of my head, I'm like, is this going to do it again? It's just I can't wrap my head around. GameStop, I could wrap my head around it, right? They had a huge scale. Their debt position wasn't that crazy. They had cash on hand. There was levers they could pull, right? I Open, it's like I still look at the housing sector, and I'm like, it would take all right. I'm not in, so I hope it goes to the moon. It's not something I'm going to chase. Let's have a great day, folks. I'll be back on audio later. Rock and roll.